Welcome back to Living Resonance. I'm Monifa, and today we are exploring the cosmic current of the gene keys and the lunar cycle so that you can cultivate your voice, live your genius, and leave your legacy in harmony with the current frequencies. So, currently we're in lunar phase, full moon in Aquarius, which is gene key 13 in human design, gate 13. We are experiencing themes of the shadow of discord, the gift of discernment, and city of empathy, SIDDHI. So that's the higher echelon of how when everybody's working in together under the energy, that is what we're experiencing. But it's also kind of how that energy is shared with everyone once it's in the oneness of the unity, right? So the genius here is listening, moving from confusion to clarity is the goal right now, in my estimation. And we all pick our own goals based on where we are and how we are being and what is up for us, and what we're creating next. And so for me right now, I'm in this kind of in betweenness in this very liminal space. I've been meditating. I've also been like ruminating and allowing new ideas, new structures, new possibilities come up for me. And that's been happening over the course of several days, but especially in the last couple days. So even deep uncoverings of myself. And one of the reasons I'm mentioning it is because I might have a little different vibe today. And that's part of it, right? And then also because I think it's kind of what's the energy here is wanting to offer and what it's allowing us to experience in ourselves, right? So we are in a full moon, and that's we get those, right? We get one of those at least a month. um, but what's different right now is that there's a grand trine, and that grand trine is in the air signs. And though that grand trine is including three very active, um, like even like if we're going by the old timey way of talking about astrology, it would be considered the malefic, right? There's some malefic planets interplaying, but it's not in this kind of the whole understanding. They're just what change agents look like, and sometimes change can look harsh or uncomfortable, and so it tends to get billed as bad and or malefic, right? But we have Uranus, Pluto, and Mars in a grand air trine. Air being, how we are connected, communicating. We all breathe the same air. In other words, like our ancestors are breathing the same from the same miasma as we're breathing now, right? So it's this never ending cycle of interplay, connection, how we think, how we connect, how we communicate. All those are in play with this energy, and why am I mentioning that is because it basically means that everything's up. Everything's up for change. Everything's up for disruption. Everything's up for anything, and everything is up, right? And what are we doing here? We're here to recognize what energies are available and then make choices that are about understanding where we are, where we're resourced, and where we're going, right? We don't get to know everything about those things, but we get to choose how we move forward or walk into the next thing, right? And so with this information, what I'm recommending is that you get real clear on what you're changing, right? And that's what I'm doing. That's what I'm being about is I'm meditating. I'm not making any grand assumptions. I'm going with what's kind of what percolates, but also allowing for just nothingness as well, right? So meditation is not necessarily about getting to any one thing. Whereas if I was contemplating, that's different. Like if I was going to sit down and contemplate aspects of my business, then I would say, well, my business is this, and I like this, and I want this. And it would be a very kind of intentional contemplation. And then I would see what else comes up around those things. In meditation, it's more like, hmm, right? It's just like, blank space. There's an idea. Oh, that's nice. And there's just a sense of non-attachment, and yet allowing myself to be in wonder and curiosity about what comes up and what ideas come to mind and what possibilities come to mind, and just like, oh, that's interesting. I don't mind that, right? And then just let it go. That's one of those things you learn when you do regular meditation, is that it's like, yeah, that's great. But I don't need to grasp at it. It's like the only good thing in my head, in my life, in the whatever, right? And that's what meditation teaches us, is that it can feel like we need all of we need ideas, we need people, we need money, we need. And that again is part of the energies in this 13, is this needing, creating, or the need being a fear of not receiving what is necessary. And then breeding desires that are born out of the fear of not getting what we need. Right. And so it creates this lattice work. And so what happens in that is that we end up in that shadow of discord. Okay. So that's about the gene key. So I want to touch on quantum human design here, get a little human design moment. So our word coming from quantum human design is narrative. And why I think this is really powerful is that it's giving us this understanding that how we tell the story of our experiences in our past, and how we are telling the story of where we are, and how we're telling ourselves the story of what is possible for us, are very indicative of essentially what we get to experience, and how we choose what to do and what's next, right? And so in this understanding of the narrative, we have to understand how we may have been telling a story that is untrue, which is allowing for whatever separation or gap in the meeting of our needs is happening. And so it's for you to ask that question: what narrative am I telling? And what is the true story? And I love this kind of string of understanding in this question that helps you kind of explore that if you're in that place right now with me. So here it is. It's, did you forget about your beauty, your power, your strength, your courage, your capability, your creativity? So have you forgotten about any of those things? I think a lot of times we think resources, again, only come in the external. What do we have? What are we getting? Money, things, power, right? But this is the truth of power. This is what is already in you, is you're already resource. You came with these things, and nobody really can take them away unless you allow it, unless you've created a story that they have taken them away, right? And we can rewrite that story. That's always Karen Curry Parker's invitation, is to rewrite that story. Okay. That's not just for this one. This is for like every energy that we come across. It's about understanding like our interplay with that, and what is the story, what is the story we're creating around that. And we're going to have an affirmation around that later. So what's challenging about it is to be able to forgive what's happened in the past, and redefine based on what you know your resources or value, your beauty, your power, your strength are, right? And to be able to bear witness to the pain and narrative of others, and offer them a better story. And we've talked about this a little bit in the past, and it can sometimes be a timing thing when we are inviting others to change their story or to rewrite the story with us, right? And so I would say that this is probably the right time. Like this and the new moon is very good, well conducive to truth and connection with ourselves, obviously, in our how we're speaking to ourselves in these narratives, but also with others and how we expect to talk to and hear from each other. Okay. And ultimately, we're using this energy, the idea of narrative, to be the ability to use the power of narrative and create with purpose and intention. Okay. And so that is pretty much what we talked about, right? So I'm going to actually, it's probably going to be a little, hopefully, I'm thinking it's going to be a little shorter today because this is really a very, very simple concept. Like meditation, the only thing that can make it complicated is if you're holding on to anything. It's not wrong to have a thought. It's wrong to hold on to it or to start trying to make it mean something, or like even when you have a great moment of like a vision or a download in meditation, the thing that will kill it the fastest is if you try to hold on to it, right? Like you just want it to kind of flow through, and then you just allow it to unfold, because the more you try to grasp it, the more your kind of limited mind kind of either chokes it out a little bit or just makes it smaller than it can be. And that's just not, if it happens, it happens. There's no judgment, but it can unfold much more easily when we don't need to make it or hold on to it as strongly. So one of the things we're learning in the Gene Keys understanding of the energy 13 is that the shadow of discord refers to the inability to escape your own past. So there's a couple things going on there. I actually use this quote twice just to kind of reaffirm what it is, because in some gene keys, a lot of the conditionality comes primarily from our evolution. And I mean, that's true for all of the frequencies, but it is not just human evolution, but also evolution of energy and just how things are created and come to be and our reality. And so this is really, where was I going with that? Essentially, that is that we need to be able to see how just the perception of the idea is leading us astray here, because that's essentially the point of the narrative. How do you see when something wrong or clashing or not in harmony with your truth and your desires that are known? And when we see that as discord, right? Do we see that that story tends to be wrapped up in a ball? And that's what I see in this very short statement. Discord refers to the inability to escape your own past, right? Like those are they're all limited words, right? Shadow, discord. Discord is a limited word in that it's saying that there's when there's things that are discordant, there is no harmony, right? That, which is like not necessarily true. Like anybody who's listened to modern music and how it tends to become this thing that can oftentimes be harmonious within its own framework. And so that's something that, again, you might need to have some life experiences for you to be able to see how that may be possible. But that's one of the first kind of knots. It's like, okay, is that true? Well, it depends on how you perceive it. If you hate modern music and you don't want to go through the confusion of the discordant to be able to discern a harmony, then not for you, right? But if you are like open to saying, okay, I'm not attached to any one of these notes or any one of these chords, and when I allow myself to become attached, then all of a sudden this new way of creating sound together starts becoming a landscape in and of itself, which is where we call like genius happening, right? In the idea of orchestral harmony. All right, I don't know if I'm getting too off the track here. Inability is the next part. It's like inability, like is inability even a truth within itself? Is there any time where the something is not able, or I am not able? There's usually, if we're here, there's usually some point of ability, unless we're not perceiving it. Okay. So again, that's a second nod. I'm just like, oh, oh. And then to escape. Hmm. Well, if depends on how I'm perceiving it. If I don't, if again, if I'm just like, oh no, it's not the harmony that I'm used to, then it's only just, it must be discordant, then I would feel like I wanted to escape the sound or the noise, because that's no longer sound, that's noise. Or if I letting it kind of come through as it wants to be, then I don't need to escape anything. So why escape? Why am I escaping something? Right? And then your own past. Why would I need to escape my own past? I might want to escape the past of that somebody else inserted their action of story into. Right? That makes sense. But why would I want to escape my own? Like if it was my past, it would be the way I wanted it, and it would be my story, and it would be under my narrative. See where I'm going with that? And so it's just this knot, but it is the truthism of that shadow. All right. So again, together it's saying discord refers to the inability to escape your own past. Mm, I just feel that. I feel that shadow because it's like your beingness is just going to want to untangle that, right? Another quote. Yeah, another quote. However, at the lower frequencies, because of our inability to listen, we go on pursuing our own short-term agendas and disastrous consequences to the greater society. Ironically, we find no solace from our own desires either. No matter how many of our desires we sate, more appear. We either we hear only discord in the world because we are unable to listen to the overall dilemma. And for me, this is like, again, there was not a lot of things that I would, Richard wrote it very well. There was nothing for me to kind of add to these things. And it's like kind of either we're there and we're understanding how shadow is working, and that is really driving the perception of how we're experiencing our reality, and therefore creating more of what we think we're seeing, which tends to be the shadow, right? The patterns that are complicating, that are destroying, that are creating more and more disharmony, tearing down structures, right? And again, we can perceive that as wholly bad, or we can see that as like an alchemization of what is coming, right? And that's kind of what this invitation to me is in this new energy. It's Aquarian energy. It's the Aquarian age. It's an invitation to create something new that is in connection with the narrative of the whole. So collective and the unity, the not us as separate in our separate desires, but us together in our whole vision of what it would be like for all of us to have an experience that is desirable. And I don't think desire is the enemy here, although it is stated that way in the chapter for Gene Keys. I don't think desire is the enemy. I think it is the unction that will continue to get discerned. And the more we can understand it from a love frequency, from listening from love, which is the ability here, because we're listening with our whole being, but we can be listening for the discord, or we can be listening for the harmony, right? So the fear here is very familiar, right? It's the fear of surviving, that we're not going to survive, we're not going to get what we need. And so we think that our desires are only speaking to getting what we need, or we're only looking for those. We're only contemplating the desires that will get us what we need, right? And so when you only see that, that's limited, and it creates a cycle of fear patterns that is very natural. It's what kept a lot of us alive by seeing like, how is this going to kill us? And how is this going to kill us off? Okay, we'll go this way, right? But those when we had very physical threats, and now we're kind of making up the story or imagining threats. If they're in the past, then they may be threatening us mentally, but they are not threatening us physically, right? Um, and if it is present, then that's when you need to have true and real action. And that's the point of having that clarity of discernment. And that is what this is giving us in the full understanding. Okay. One of the things that I've been absorbing during this time, even though I'm not supposed to be absorbing anything, but it has been the book um, Be Water, My Friend, which is Bruce Lee's daughter's writings on his philosophies, essentially. And it's beautiful. And I'm very much a water being. I'm Cancer, Sun, and Moon, Scorpio rising. And so many astrologies and charts, water is a primary element of my nature, and it's just what it is, right? And so I feel a deep affinity with all of the wisdom. I'm actually thinking of doing a voiceover of a section of the book because it's so correlative of the work that I do. And I think it's something that everybody needs to hear in this way that is just clear and identified as a way of being, as a physical being, but in the truth of who we really are. And so, anyways, but that may be coming, just so you know, that's probably coming. All right, so there's two shadow aspects as usual for the whole shadow is discord, but in the repressive energy frame, it's called permissive. And again, I couldn't figure out a better way to explain this, so I have a quote for you. The repressive side of the shadow may make a show of listening to everyone, but it soon becomes apparent that they have no real backbone. And then I'm going to skip a little bit here. This is one of the deepest forms of emotional repression that does not want to take in the pain pleasure cycle at any level. So it sacrifices both extremes and settles for a false sense of safety. This is something I know extremely intimately, y'all. Like, this is one of those things that was how I realized my world is getting smaller and smaller and smaller when I was living in fear, overwhelm, anxiety. And I kept trying to make things more controlled, controlled in a way that would make me feel safe. And the more I did it, the more I felt this stuck. The more I felt like my world was just getting smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller. Okay. On the reactive side of this energy, it looks like being narrow minded. I have another quote for you. Such people harbor a deep bitterness about the nature of human beings, and this comes out most frequently as anger, especially at those who do not see things their way. With such people, it often becomes their mission in life to debunk the views of those who are optimistic about the future and about humanity. So I feel like these are just, again, shadow is not wrong in and of itself. It's pointing us to what our perceptions are becoming, right? What we're creating for ourselves as long as we allow ourselves to keep believing that this is what is available and only available, right? If we keep believing that there's no way out and there's no truth of our desire that will be a service to everyone, right? Then we will become narrow-minded, and then we'll get angry when people don't believe the way we believe. So if we're seeing that and we're seeing that happening within us or around us, then it's a cue that the gift is available. And that's always the power that is available. So the power that is available is discernment. This power allows us to see the webs and patterns of our desires. So what are our fearful desire emanations creating, and or would create if we allowed ourselves to act from them. And it's allowing us to untangle the web and patterns of desire that have created the old narrative of our past. So it's allowing us to take that apart and therefore be able to discern from a heart level, that we're listening more clearly to, well, this is what that is, but I'm not, but this is what it means, and this is what I'm choosing for it to mean about creating who I am and what I'm building for the future. And I am fully in resonance with that. I'm going to not perceive that as, the pain to be a disharmony, which is again moving back to the understanding of the oppressive, the repressive, permissive shadow energy, that pain pleasure cycle that we're trying to run away from, that I was just talking about, right? Not feeling this, that you have to run away, is not necessary, right? Like you can just decide that it's part of how you get to discern what is of coming of love, what is coming from possibility, what is coming from wholeness, and how we can, again, the truth of prosperity to me is that when I prosper, everybody around me, anybody who's connected to me in that web, prospers along with me, right? And so that is the belief that I hold of how we can grow and be together, my needs met, your needs met, and more, right? And so, what is your truth? What is your story? And how are you writing that? That is the question. So, I want to leave a couple things with you. So, the affirmation that I want to leave with you is from Karen Curry Parker. Those other quotes I just did, those three quotes were from the Gene Keys, right? And this is from Karen Curry Parker. I am the only person in the world with the power and permission to tell the story of who I am. I am who I declare myself to be, and I am sovereign over the story I tell myself and the world about who I am and how I am. I am powerful. I am a victor, and I reclaim my power, my value, my love, and my worthiness from any limiting narrative I may be telling about myself. My capacity to tell my own story is the immutable source of my creative power. So that's a long quote, y'all. That's a long one. But yeah, get some transcription software. You got it. You got it. All right. All right. And yeah, and that is like, okay, talking about affirmation, y'all. Okay. Again, if you feel any, you know me, I'm not about just adopting other people's affirmations. If this feels too big for you, make it a little closer to where you are and say it like you mean it. Okay. Anything that makes you too far out of your comfort zone, I feel like is a gap that wants to be healed before we try to kind of bang it in, right? Because if we try to force it, then it can cause even more separation. Like if you're, I'm thinking of one of those split wood axes that you just kind of put the wood in and just splits apart because you're trying to fit it in, right? Anyways, moving on. So, and normally, like I said before, like if you're not into meditation, if you're not quite there yet, and your mind's just racing and you're still working on that, or you're not working on that, you're not up for it, then I'm going to give you a contemplation, which can sometimes be a little easier. It's like, having something to focus on. That's why a lot of people suggest beginning meditators use something like a candle or a plant, or just have something to focus on and just like kind of breathe and just be with the thing as much as possible, right? And this gives you some place for the mind to rest. Well, contemplations can do that as well. That's why we have contemplative questions. You'll see a lot of gurus use these contemplating questions, like where does where does life end, right? And then you're just like, ah, and then you're just off because you're like, well, what is life? It depends on what you mean. Do you mean life as an atom or life as an organism? And like you can go on and on and on. It just like spreads you into this, like we have to like, is there an end? There is no, or is there no end, right? Like it just takes you into these deep concepts that allow you just to kind of be without needing an answer, so to speak, because there is no one answer, right? Anyways, this is the contemplation I'm leaving. Why this? Why you? Why now? So I want that to be for whatever's coming up for you in this full moon in Aquarius. If you need something more specific, go ahead and have this be about your business. Okay. Why this? Why you? Why now? All righty. All right. That's what I have for you today. I would love for you to watch our Diva and Ankh episode called Religion to Relationships. I'm putting the link below. It's one of our most popular episodes, and I think you can get a lot out of it. Actually, the one before that too, if you have time, masculine and feminine, it's not at war, is the other one that I think would be really powerful. But they are all good. They are all good. So if I would love for you to enjoy each and every one of them. Until next time on New Moon, I will see you then.